Thank you. Oh. Afternoon. Hello. And hello to everybody streaming, wherever you are. I don't know where your camera is, but welcome, yes. Over there. Oh, hello. So my name is Mark. I'm here today, let's see if I can do this, to talk to you about a project which is our sunlight simulation experience. So I'm not going to hold around too much doing too many introductions. I'm going to go straight into the project itself because there's a lot to talk about. So the project itself. So this is our office in Birmingham. We were pretty much bursting at the seams, and we pretty much used all the space we could find to get people into the office, and we just ran out of space. And so, but luckily for us, the tenants above handed in their notice, and the floor became vacant. So it was decided by management that we would take the floor above, and we would add some more office space, some more workspace, and also some breakout spaces, and we'd tart it up a little bit. We'd do bits to the town hall. And the key bit, we would put in a new bespoke staircase. And what this would do is it would join the two floors together. So this is the 5th floor we can see here. Join the two floors together, both visually and physically, so people could see through and everyone felt like they were part of this one big office environment. So, like all our offices in Cundall, we try and use them as a bit of a test bed. So we like to push innovation and ideas forward in our own offices first before letting them out onto the general public. So like we've done in previous offices, London here, we were one of the first offices to get a WELL accreditation, I think in the UK. In Birmingham, only 2 or 3 years back previous to this, we won awards for, I think, 4-point-something watts per square meter for our office lighting. At the time, that was quite a big thing. So the office itself, the actual working area was going to be fairly straightforward. We were going to reuse some of the fittings that we had on the 4th floor and repurpose and recycle them and reuse them in different ways, trying to limit the spend on the whole project. But the staircase was this thing that kind of jumped out at all of us in the team, and we thought this is where we need to do something a little bit special, a little bit different, and sort of showcase what we can do with light and lighting. So what do we do? All lighting designers want to show off, I think, and so we want to create something. So we thought, should we do something like a feature pendant? This is something we did in Broadgate Quarter, just around the corner. Do we create something bespoke, something just for this staircase that sort of shouts, hello, look at me, I'm an amazing pendant? And we all thought, no, I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. The stair is quite a beautiful thing in itself. Maybe it will detract from it. So we thought, well, do we start to integrate? Do we start to put something within the lattice of the stair? Do we work with it to create a feature? And again, it all became a bit too complicated. I don't know if you saw earlier, the structure of the stair was a sort of lattice, very delicate architecture. And by integrating, it just started to detract from the stair itself. So we decided, as in the group of designers, that the stair itself was going to be the feature in this space, and that any lighting we applied to it would have to be sympathetic to the stair itself. So we're scratching our heads, as we do, and one of the girls in the team said, well, why don't we just cut a big hole in the roof? Let all the sunlight and the daylight come through, a bit like a Pantheon-style type of installation, you know, natural light coming through. And we went, yes, that's a great idea. Let's cut a great big hole in the roof. But the landlord wasn't too pleased, obviously, as you can imagine. And also the budget, unfortunately, wouldn't stretch to one hole, let alone 2 holes in the slab. But on that point, it resonated with us, and we just couldn't stop thinking about the idea of this natural light coming from above, this sort of angelical kind of light coming down the staircase, even though it's right in the middle of the office where there's no daylight at all. And so we started to think about daylight and natural light, and we sort of concluded that we could break it down into these 3 main components: color, intensity, and then movement. So, color. There's a lot of talk about tunable white. It's becoming more and more important and more prevalent in the industry. But for people who don't know, this is about the idea of warmer color temperature in the morning, going to a cooler sort of 4,000, 5,000, even 6,500 Kelvin in the day, and then back down to this sort of warmer color temperature at nighttime. Now, it's becoming sort of ingrained in what we're starting to do now as lighting designers. So that was kind of like the first thing. The second thing, which was intensity, and this is a little bit less understood, and this is to do with the idea that people prefer lower levels of light when they have a warmer color temperature, and they prefer higher levels of light when they have a much cooler temperature. Now this seems a bit obvious really, and we all probably do this at home when you're working late, catching up on a few things with your side lights on around in your living room. That sort of warmer, lower level of light we're quite happy with. We don't expect a much brighter, more intense level of light. And then the third one then, movement. This is where I think it starts to get a bit more interesting. Offices typically are very static. They're very, in terms of lighting anyway, they're sort of uniform blankets of light. Sometimes we localize lighting, which is what we're always pushing for. But generally, movement as an idea in office hasn't really been thought of too much. And the sun moves, and the sky moves, and the clouds move, and we move as people, and objects move through spaces, and shadows change, and intensity of light changes, and that kind of I suppose animation of light is what really fascinated us as a group. So we decided that these three things, these three simple components, would be the basis of our design, the heart of our design. So we started to think, well, how do we introduce that? How are we going to put that into this installation? And again, I don't know where this idea came from, but the idea of a clock and the idea of a passing of time came into our mind. And so we thought, well, with that, you've got sort of these 12 points on a clock. And we keep the installation quite simple, really. We would have individual luminaires based at each point in time around the clock. And the light would come from above, and we'd get this really amazing sort of angelical lighting feeling that we were after. And then what we'd start to do with that, we'd start to introduce these other three components, which would be the color. So shifting of the color in the morning from sort of 2,000, 2,500 Kelvin up to the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, and back down again to the 2.5. And we'd also then introduce this intensity, this idea that at the lower levels of light, when we're at the low level, we would have a much less intense level of light. So we'd dim the lights down to, say, 50%, and we'd ramp them back up again in the day to, say, 100%. So we've got this cooler light, and more intense, brighter level of light. And then finally, the movement, and this was a bit where it starts to get a bit more interesting. We'd start to move the direction of which the light came down onto the stairs by simply turning on and off or dimming the lights in this kind of clock sequence, so that the lights would come from, say, 12 o'clock. Every hour they would be shifting round where the light was physically coming from. So that was the proposal. And we did some very quick renders. We actually just used Dialux Evo, but then we picked up the model and photo montaged it onto the architect's renders to try and sell this idea to him and to the management board of, this is what we'd like to do, are you okay with this? So sunrise, morning, so you can see the shadows moving across and the intensity of light and the also color of light changing. And this all went in, and we set back, and the shadows were beautiful. The light from above was lovely. But we weren't getting this kind of animated experience that we'd all kind of were after, this kind of idea of moving light. And we just felt everything was a bit slow. It was a bit too subtle. And we'd almost made something too natural that we didn't really notice anything was happening at all. And it's taken us back to where I started with, and the idea that as lighting designers we want to do something and sort of show off and say, hello, look, this is what we've done. And so we scratched our head a little bit more, we stood around and we thought, and we decided that what would happen if we sped up the 12-hour cycle and condensed it into 2 minutes? How would that feel? What would that be like? And there was obviously a lot of questions that came around about that, because this is a stair, people do walk up and down this stair, to get from 4 to 5. And can we do that? I mean, can we have animated light on a staircase? And this was something we were all sort of questioning in our minds. And I kept coming back to the point that, you go outside, and as you can see from the image, the shadows change, things are moving, vehicles move and create different shadows. We don't live in this kind of uniform, natural, lit environment. So why not? Why can't we do this? But just from a safety point of view, we decided, you know what, let's just be safe, and let's have a maintained minimum luminance. So we'd always have, say, 10% light on, but then we'd increase the intensity. So you'd always have a level of light, but then we'd overlay that with the intensity, and that's what would give you this kind of contrast within the space. And yeah, we were really happy. It came out really, really well. The images show this kind of really unique kind of effect where we got the lattice structure, and you can see the sort of the different intensities of light sort of moving across, and it's a really fascinating space to walk through and transition through, and it's really, really fun to be in. Obviously, don't take my word for it. I'm going to show you a little video at the end here now, just to show you how that animated light runs. Fingers crossed. There we go. Thank you very much. That's it. 3 minutes to go. Excellent. Thank you.